A lot of people make decisions and choose a path in life, not because they love it, but because they feel it's the best, or they have no other choice. Jen Taylor is in a similar situation, where she thinks she's where she's meant to be, but with her new win in Chestnut Hill, will she see a difference? Or will she be proved right? In the opening scene of My Christmas Inn, we see a meeting room, where Jen Taylor gives a presentation on the Silky Cocoa Milk advertisement in front of the clients and her superior, who all seem to be satisfied with the work. Her boss is proud of her, since Jen has been able to secure a long-term contract from the client. She's so happy that she announces that Jen might get a bonus. Diane, Jen's assistant, who notices they love the pitch, congratulates her, but Jen passes it off as giving them the fantasy they wanted. She doesn't believe in fantasies, and even as it is the Christmas season, she doesn't have a Christmas tree. Diane updates Jen on people who contacted her, and Brian Anderson remains one persistent person. Jen explains to Diane that it's because he is in charge of her great-aunt Helen's will, since she passed away. Jen doesn't see the will as anything important, since she believes her aunt would have left something like her spoon collection for her. While they are talking, Karen, an annoying colleague of Jen who believes she's the best, appears at the door, congratulating her in a rather rude way. She believes it was only because she wasn't around that Jen was successful. Karen then spills some gossip on how they might need a new creative director before the holidays, as Tyler, the present one, is leaving soon. Jen, who's been trying to keep her smile, sighs in relief after she leaves. Annoyed, Diane comforts her, as she believes Jen's better than her. She reminds Jen of her plans with Irene in the evening, giving her no room to reschedule again, as she's already done so 4 times. In the next scene, Jen arrives at the bar where Irene is already seated, sincerely apologizing for being late. Irene brushes it off, as she even expected her to reschedule once again. They catch up after a long time having missed each other, and Irene goes on about Bill, her boyfriend, while Jen talks about her frustration with Karen. Irene also tries to coax Jen into seeing one of Bill's friends, but Jen quickly refuses before she can even finish a sentence. As Jen heads home, she gets a call from her parents, who are enjoying their holiday. They're happy to hear from her, and ask her to find some time for Brian Anderson, her grand-aunt Helen's lawyer, who they've been getting calls from. But she doesn't promise she will. They're not sure what she left Jen, but they know it's time-sensitive and confidential. They suggest she sees the lawyer, even though she thinks it's something silly. She promises to call him the next morning. Worried, they plead with her to find time to rest and not overwork herself. The next day, at her office, Jen takes the time to call Brian, who informs her that her aunt left her an inn. She is shocked, even more so when Brian says she has to get to Chestnut Hill in Alaska to claim the property. He advises her to get to Alaska before the end of the year for tax purposes, and Jen can't even imagine it, as she has a lot of work to do. Jen informs Els, and is surprised once again when she allows her to go. Els believes she has earned it, since she hasn't taken any vacation time, and Karen, who's been there the whole time, is elated by the news. She offers to pick up on Jen's workload. This makes Jen worried that if she's away, she might not get the promotion she wants. Not wanting that to happen, she promises to be back by Christmas. At the airport, Irene informs her that she'll start putting feelers out to her commercial property contacts, and asks her to just send photos of the inn. Jen is grateful to have someone like her, when she promises to get the inn off the market by Christmas. The airplane ride to Alaska is smooth, and getting down, Jen asks a man who's been standing there if it's the pickup point. She feels offended when he asks if she's seen an old woman who looks like she's been buried in her work. The man, Brian, immediately apologizes, as he expected someone much older, and is surprised to see someone as young as Jen. This makes her explain that Aunt Helen was a great aunt. They don't get off on the right foot, and Jen walks to the car, annoyed. On the car ride, Jen starts up a conversation, and finds out that although Brian is a lawyer, he also makes sleighs, as it's a small town. Wondering what's so important about her job, he asks about it, sincerely curious, and thinks it is a job of lies when she tells him it's advertising. Brian offends her slightly with his words once again, as he points her out for being too busy to visit her aunt or be with her family. Jen is left speechless at his bluntness. In her defense, she says her parents are traveling. When he notices she wants to get back to her job quickly, Brian pleads with her not to sell off the inn to just anyone, as it means a lot to the townspeople. They arrive at the inn, and Jen is pleased by the look, as she expected something more run down. Brian asks Jen to put up some Christmas decorations. This annoys her, as she's not into that kind of thing. When Brian offers to help her get settled, she refuses, believing she can do it. Still, he asks her to come to him if she needs anything, because his office is around the corner. She snatches the papers out of Brian's hands. Jen looks around for a while, getting the hang of things, before setting a fire. In the next scene, Brian goes to Molly's cafe, where he meets his mom Molly and his sister Beth. Immediately, they source information about Jen. Unfortunately, Brian only has bad things to say, and Beth wonders if it's not his unwelcoming vibe. Molly advises him to give her time to adjust, as they don't know what she can do. Unfortunately, she's interrupted by a call about a fire at the inn. Brian rushes to the inn, where he sees Jen coughing and smoke. She complains that she only set a fire, and everywhere started smoking up. but Brian finds out she didn't put up the damper since she doesn't know what it is. Frustrated, she blames Brian for not telling her there won't be heat. But Brian just covers her with a blanket and sends her to Molly's cafe. After she leaves, he laughs, as the situation is quite funny. In Molly's cafe, Jen is received warmly by Molly and Beth, who are concerned for her. Molly makes sure she sits while she gets tea, also promising to speak with the guy who never mentioned there was no heat at the inn. Jen sees her Aunt Helen's paintings, and she and Molly get talking about her. She's surprised to find out that her aunt talked about her a lot, and regrets not having spent time with her. Brain walks in, as everything in the inn is set, and Jen, getting ready to leave, thanks Molly and Beth for the warm welcome. Molly wishes she could stay longer, and Brain breaks the news that she's here to sell the inn. Molly is mortified at his rudeness, apologizing on behalf of her son. As she leaves, Molly reminds her to stop by the next day. Back in the inn, Jen takes pictures to send to Diane, but notices dirt, much to her annoyance. She goes to the closet to get cleaning supplies, but comes across a box in her aunt's name instead. Taking it to the living room, she looks through it, seeing old pictures, and even her diary, where she writes about her first experience in Chestnut Hill, and the nice people. The next day, Jen stops by Molly's cafe for breakfast on her way to Brain's office, as her kitchen is empty. She meets David, the mailman, who helps her choose a meal, and Doe, Beth's boyfriend. By chance, she overhears Lana and Molly talking about the Christmas festival of Chestnut Hill, and gets interested. Lana invites her, and on hearing that she's Helen's niece, she feels relieved. She starts listing things like decorating the inn, and being in charge of the gingerbread booth, and Jen feels a little overwhelmed. But she takes up the job, as she's ready for a challenge. Lana is excited, and tells her to meet her at 6 p.m. On the side, Molly implores David, who's staring at Lana, to ask her out, but he says he's waiting for the right time. Jen heads to Brain's office, but finds him at his workshop instead, working on a sleigh. She jokes about elves, and is surprised that he's good. Brian is happy about the compliment, although the business has not brought in money yet. Soon Jen understands why, when she sees his flyer, which looks very dull. She hands him the paperwork, happy that she owns an inn, forgetting for a moment that she wants to sell it. Brain asks how many days it will take to sell, and she prays it's 2 days or so. They continue talking and laughing, and she even tells him how she got roped into doing a gingerbread booth for the Chestnut Hill Festival. Soon, she has to leave. At the front of the inn, Jen meets David, who hands her 4 months' worth of Helen's mail. They talk for a while, and she discovers the gravity of what the inn means to the people of Chestnut Town. It brings them joy. That night, she goes through some of the mail. Although she has urgent work to do, she continues reading Helen's diary. A call from Diane interrupts her, who tells her to spice up the inn, because it's a little dated. She also wants a professional photograph. In the next scene, Jen wakes up with a start at 10 in the morning to the doorbell ringing in her ears. She opens the door to see 2 strangers before her, wanting to check in. She sadly informs them of Helen's demise. Brain comes to recognize them as Ruth and Henry. He apologizes for not sending word of Helen's demise, and annoyingly and almost provocatively, states that Jen won't let them in, since she plans on selling the inn. Proving him wrong, Jen lets Henry and Ruth in, even setting up the polar bear room they love so much. She does not forget to rope in Brian to help her. This makes Brian wonder if the inn is officially open, but she doesn't give a definite answer. After setting up the room, Ruth and Henry head up to freshen up for the kick-off party of the first night of the festival, while Brian heads out to get ready. Conflicted, and realizing how deep she's gotten, Jen wonders what she's gotten herself into. The kick-off party has started, and Jen surprisingly has fun messing Brian's shirt with cake. Lana, honored to be the chair of the 115th Christmas Festival, takes the stage welcoming everyone to the start of a wonderful week, and Beth teases Brain for being in the Christmas spirit this year. Lana gives respect to Helen and calls Jen up to the stage, giving her the honor of lighting up the town for the start of the week. Later, as Jen is arranging the gingerbread table, Lana walks up to her, even as she's stealing glances at Brian. She appreciates the effort she has put into Christmas even though she's not a Christmas person. The next day, Jen happily crosses off the kick-off party from the festival card, and gets a message from Irene about the Christmas pictures of the inn. Getting an idea immediately, Jen rushes out to meet David, who's working in the photo booth, asking if he could take pictures of the decorations of the inn. David, who mistakes her thoughts as something she's doing for the open house, is honored to do it. Settling down, Jen and David discuss his relationship with Lana, and he gives the same excuse he's been giving for 5 years, that she's just ending a relationship. Arriving at the candy cane toss to meet Bayan, Lana invites Jen to play, but she's not interested, as she doesn't know it. Even after Lana explains the instructions, she's still skeptical, but Brian joins them and cajoles her into playing. They make a bet that Jen will paint a sled with Brian if he wins, and he'll decorate the house with her if she wins. The game starts, and Brian and Jen are at a draw with the scores. She's joyous at the victory so far, because it's something no one else has broken, and everyone is proud of her. As they are tied, they both agree to work on each other's bet. When Jen and Brian arrive at the store, the Christmas decorations are in a mess and unusable. Finding an alternative, Jen decides to order Christmas decorations from a company called Blossom Hill, which she worked for before. Though Brian is doubtful once she mentions fake Christmas trees, she convinces him, because she wants the best Christmas pictures for Irene. The next day, Jen gets a reminder from Brian asking her to bring along her painting clothes, since she's helping him out. At his workshop, Jen wonders why he isn't using the previous year's sled, but apparently they had a real reindeer, and it went wrong. Noticing she's a little off in her painting, Brian helps her out, and Molly meets them while at it. She hopes her son isn't working Jen too much, handing her some pastries. But surprisingly, Jen, who didn't think she would like Chestnut Hill, honestly admits she hasn't had so much fun in a long while. In the next scene, Jen is finally feeling the Christmas season more, as she has received her order. She and Brian get working on the decorations for the open day. With everything she's done, Brian feels that Jen has more Christmas spirit than she lets on. He also hopes the next owner of the inn will keep it as it is, because it would be strange seeing something he's known since he was little become so different. She feels someone should have taken over, and when Brian suggests she do it, she doesn't give an answer. He asks for her story, sincerely wondering why she doesn't take Christmas seriously, and she reveals it's because she became busy after leaving her parents' house, and it was a hassle. But Brian thinks it's because she is alone. She also asks for his story. His story is rather short. He took over his father's small practice business. She's wowed that he never left Chestnut Hill, and even more so when he claims he belongs there. The party at the inn starts, and David even confirms it looks wonderful, after taking some snapshots. At the end of the open day, David hands Jen her pictures wondering what she needs them for. He concludes all on his own that it is for her family, and Jen nods in agreement, flowing with it. Jen heads in and sees Ruth and Henry dancing to an old jam, and she is touched by their love. On getting to her room, she sends the pictures to Irene. She continues reading her aunt's journal, and becomes emotional when she finds out that her aunt found a fitting and loving place to spend her days. Later, she gets a video call from her parents, who want to find out how she's doing. She regrets not visiting Aunt Helen more, and she is in a dilemma of finding the right thing to do, sell the inn, or not. Her parents advise her to find what she wants to do. Then she is distracted by the sound of something hitting her window. Going out, she sees Brian throwing snowballs at her window, and she quickly ends the call. She goes to the balcony, wondering why he couldn't use his phone or the doorbell, but Brian feels it's no fun. He asks her to come down, because he has something to show her. Jen is surprised that he wants to leave in the middle of the night. Brian takes her to a nature spot where different colors bloom at night, and Jen is amazed at the beautiful sight. Brian explains that the Inuit believed the colors were the spirits of people who've lived their lives to the fullest, who become torches of light, reminding them to live their best lives. Brian feels he's just getting to where his best life is, but Jen, on the contrary, feels she has lived her best life in terms of work and success. Wanting her to see her narrow-mindedness, Brian asks if success depends on one's career, or rather on the happiness one finds in little things, like staring at the sky and the likes. Jen finally agrees that she still has a long way to go. Holding his hand, she appreciates him for everything he has done, before resting her head on his shoulder. When she returns to her room, Jen tries her hand at sketching once again as she sketches Brian. But she gets a call from Russell Nixon, CEO of Nixon's Hotel, and someone interested in buying the inn. He has experience, and is ready to pay cash. Jen realizes she no longer has the vigor of selling the inn, unlike when she first arrived. Nixon offers to send her plans of what they want to do with the inn, and Jen agrees. In a sad mood, Jen informs him it's not a good time, and he agrees to contact her the next day, making her somewhat relieved. The next day, Brian enters his mother's cafe whistling. Molly thinks his good mood has something to do with Jen. He denies it and claims he's just excited, but he can't deceive his family, especially Beth, who points out that he's never been that happy for the festival before. Finally accepting it, his mom advises him to confess, but Brian feels she cares too much about the city. His mom wants him to be open-minded, but he ignores her as he heads to his workshop. However, Molly and Beth are not worried, because they believe Brian will come around. While in her house, Jen holds the framed picture of her drawing of Brian when she gets a call from Els. She congratulates her for getting the job as a creative director, and wants her to be in San Francisco the next day, because they're going to announce her promotion at work. This is what she has always wanted, and Jen promises to be back. During the gift exchange day, David finally works up the courage to give Lana a gift and ask her out, and much to his amazement, she already knew of his feelings, but had been waiting for him to ask her out. Brian walks up to Jen. He is surprised that she brought a gift, but she clarifies it as a gift for him, and not for the exchange day. He's shocked, and even more so when he sees the drawing inside. He is happy and surprised that she's so good, and she confesses that she always wanted to be an artist. She only went into advertising because she thought it would be a more professional way to do art. With all seriousness, Jen wants to tell Brian something, but is interrupted by Lana, who wants to know where she did her Christmas decoration shopping. Jen asks if they can take a walk instead. During their walk, Jen thanks Brian for everything, but reveals that she has to leave that night because she needs to get back to work and has gotten the promotion she worked so hard for. She apologizes for not being able to stay and run the inn like they all want, and also reveals that a hotel is planning to acquire it. Brian is not happy about her going, but lies through his teeth and even offers to drive her to the airport. As Jen is packing up, she sees her aunt's diary, and as she reads about the opening of the inn, tears fall from her eyes. As she leaves, Molly and Beth, who are sad to see her leave, say their goodbyes. Brian drops her at the pickup point of the airport, where he first met her upon arrival. Well, where he first insulted her, but he admits he was an idiot then. Nervously, he asks if they would have been something if they didn't live far apart, and she thinks they would have worked out. But that doesn't make him feel any better. They bid each other goodbye. Back at the office, Jen and Diane are talking, and Jen feels the presence of Karen from afar. Karen surprisingly congratulates her for the promotion, saying she deserves it, but makes a snarky remark that nulls all her compliments. Later, she sets up a meeting with Russell Nixon to finalize the decision for the inn. Back in Chestnut Hill, Brian sulks. He had been so against the idea of telling her he fell in love with her within 1 week, because he was so sure that she wouldn't give up her life in San Francisco for him. To ease his worries, Molly reveals some truths about her past. She once gave up going to New York just to be with his dad, after she saw how serious he was about her. She hands Jen's address, which was meant to be given to David, to Brian, advising him to show her that he's willing to make a sacrifice. With this, Brian heads to San Francisco. At her office, Jen feels a little off in the meeting room, and when a half-hearted gingerbread man is brought in for snacks, she makes a snarky remark, shocking everyone. Remembering her meeting, she rushes to the restaurant to meet Nixon, and Els reminds her that she needs to be at the Christmas party for the big announcement. At the restaurant, Molly is against Nixon's idea of making Chestnut Hill special because, with their plan of building a big resort, they will pull a lot of people's lives apart. Meanwhile, Brian, who has arrived in San Francisco, misunderstands what is happening when he sees Jen through the window of the restaurant. Jen tries to explain the importance of Chestnut Hill, which is about the people, but Nixon doesn't get it. Brian interrupts them, and Jen is shocked to see him, while a frustrated Nixon tells him a business deal is going on. Right there, Jen cancels the deal, declaring her inn not for sale, and walks out. Outside, Brian is shocked that she doesn't want to sell the inn. He finally confesses that he loves her, even though it was hard and fast, and he doesn't want to lose her, even though she is hanging on to her job. Surprisingly, Jen is ready to leave the life of lies she sold to people and run the inn. She has decided to stay in Chestnut Hill. No one is as happy as Brian at that moment. Thank goodness he followed his mother's advice. Later, Jen walks to the Christmas party and informs Els, Diane, and Karen of her decision to quit, because she wants to live her life. Els bids her good luck. The party is still in full swing at Chestnut Hill when they both arrive, and everyone is surprised and happy to see them. Jen and Brian walk slowly to her inn while talking, but two people up front catch her eyes. Jen is surprised and happy to see her parents, who decided to come to the famous Chestnut Hill. They plan to stick around, making Jen even happier. She reveals her decision to live in Chestnut Hill, and although they're taken aback, they support her. While her parents head inside, Jen and Brian kiss right under some mistletoe.